Hi there, welcome back to the Mind Masters Mindset and Mental Health podcast. Um, we are still on season two, making our way through season two. As I warned you guys at the end of season one, season two was going to be really, really good, and we were going to really ramp things up. We continue with the diversity of our guests, getting people from all different backgrounds, with all different stories to come on and share with you guys, chew the fat a little bit, go there and then some. And I'm really, really excited to bring our next guest. Um, some of you might recognise the name, but you will absolutely be much, much clearer by the end of the episode of who we're speaking to. Her most recent appearance, for some of you that like me follow different people, would be romping past the London Marathon finish line, an off a pace as we say in Scotland. But we're going to get into that through the episode. So I'm really, really pleased and humbled to welcome Mhairi MacLennan, the HOKA athlete, fantastic runner, but also a woman with a story. Like many of us, she comes from her own adversity and challenge to navigate through to who she is right now and who she's striving to become. So welcome, Mhairi.
Hiya.
How are we doing?
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Yep, it's an early morning conversation for us this morning. Hopefully not too early. I often, when I suggest these early things, I forget that no, everyone's morning person, but hopefully you are.
Well, I've already been up since 6, so
Oh,
I'm
good,
good.
good,
It's the
good, good.
afternoon now.
So I am trying to introduce you there, but how would you introduce to people who are watching, listening when this podcast drops? So most of my people will be out walks in the car, running and stuff. How would you introduce Mhairi?
So I'm from the Highlands. I'm a safe sport advocate, an activist, I guess you could say. I run a not-for-profit that helps to support, educate, and advocate around measures to improve people's psychological and physical safety in sport. And then I'm also an athlete, which is why that's kind of what took me to doing that. I've got my own lived experience of, I suppose, um, yeah, abuse in sport.
Mhm. And the advocacy service, because I was actually reading about that over the weekend. That's yourself and another girl that started that.
Yeah, so it was myself and my co-founder, Kate Seary. We're both runners. We met through campaigning. So I knew who she was kind of through competitions and stuff, but we do quite different events. And we came together with another athlete 3 years ago to run a campaign for a policy implementation within UK athletics. And from there, we sort of decided to forge on.
And how has that journey went in terms of the advocacy service? How have you found that? Because that, although you're chasing a passion, which is to make a difference and stuff, that then comes with enormous pressure as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it comes with enormous pressure necessarily. Like nobody's kind of expecting us to fix sport, but it's yeah, definitely an ambition, and we're looking to try and where we can improve policies, procedures, processes around safeguarding and welfare. And we now run a support service for athletes who are going through reporting processes or who feel that they maybe didn't get the outcome that they were looking for from an investigation, or they want representation in disciplinary meetings and stuff like that with their sports. We sort of try to bridge the communication gap between athletes and their national governing bodies, or any participant in sport and the national governing body. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely had its up and downs, and it's not always easy, but it feels like an important thing to be doing at the moment.
I think it is an important thing. I think probably the context of maybe my question never really did explain it properly. I guess what I mean was, um, how do you find the pressure of being of service to people that have that have been through that. They've been through similar things to you. They're going through things, you know, the pressure of being someone who can make a difference, being someone who can help these people that have been through maybe at times huge trauma. And how do you know, that sort of pressure to be of good service to people?
I mean, I don't really feel it as a pressure, if I'm honest. I definitely, yeah, it's like it's an honor to be able to kind of play any part, and people seem to gravitate towards us because we're independent from national governing bodies. You know, we're able to provide impartial advice, and you know, we don't have any skin in the game with the national governing body. We don't need to. We're not trying to protect our reputation, if you like. You know, the grievance is usually against the national governing body or someone within that. So we can kind of provide that, yeah, impartial support, if you like. And so I don't really feel it as a pressure. Obviously, you know, you want to do justice to the athlete if you can. It's not always possible. But yeah, I really don't perceive it as a pressure. It's just I feel very lucky that people feel that they can rely on us or they can get something from us.
Mm-hmm. We'll come back to a bit more about the service that you're doing with that. I want to like take it back a bit, so we'll bounce straight into that there, which is good. I like that. I like the unscripted way. So where does Mhairi begin? Where does the story begin for Mhairi? You mentioned growing up in the Highlands. So where does it begin? Where does your sort of start kick in terms of getting into running, and how does that journey develop?
It's probably not that interesting a story or that different to anyone else's that's been in the sport for as long as I have. I'm from a really active family. We did a lot of hill climbing, canoeing, mountain biking, etc. when I was a kid. And I guess because when you're in primary school, you have to write about your weekends. On a Monday, everybody knew that we were quite a sporty family. And it was in primary school, the school janitor started doing cross country sessions on a Tuesday and Thursday lunchtime. And I honestly just thought it looked like the most boring thing I'd ever seen. I couldn't believe people were just running laps around a grass pitch. I was used to like going up rows and thinking that was really exciting.
Yeah.
But I guess I've always had a competitive streak. And one of the girls in my class was like, "Oh, you think you're so active, but you don't do cross country." So I was like, huh, fine, I will show you. Um, and I just really liked it. I think up until that point, I'd done a lot of sports. That maybe were like girls' sports or perceived as for girls. So like I did Highland dancing, I did ballet, I did hockey, you know, and I think I really liked that running didn't really seem to have that gendered element, particularly at that age. You know, you're all just on the start line together, and I could beat the boys. So I just really liked it, and I took to it, and I liked being good at it. So yeah, sort of just progressed through primary school. I think I won Scottish primary school cross country championships in my last year of primary school. And then I don't know, I think for me, like I loved primary school, secondary school, not so much. I didn't really get the memo that you weren't really supposed to be yourself. You're supposed to like try and fit in. So running was this like equalizing place where, you know, you went to the running club and you were all just in lycra. Like there was nobody could tell what brand you did or didn't have, particularly back then. And I just really liked that, you know, people saw you for you, I guess, maybe, or, you know, I don't know. I had a lot of good friends there, so it was just a bit of a community and a fun thing to go and do after school. Definitely fluctuated in terms of my enjoyment of it when I was a teenager. Like, you know, sometimes I just wanted to go out with the weekend with my friends, and like I would make up lies to my mum about why I couldn't compete. I'd be like, "Oh, there's been an electric fault at the track, can't go this weekend." And expecting her to care, and she was just like, "Good, I don't need to give you a lift in." um, and then yeah, just progressed and like kept involved in it, I guess. It was always just, yeah, maybe the guy I was dating was from running, or, you know, my best friend was at running. So it was just a place to go and see people, and I liked being good at it.
So you talked about finding out you're pretty good earlier on, you're beating the boys. We could be onto something here. So when does that then start to go from primary school champ, and how does that start to? What's the first significant jumping class that you see after that then?
So I think there was one summer where I was sort of thinking about giving up running because I just thought this is like I didn't for me summers were like for adventures and like going hiking with my family and like going away for 2 weeks or whatever, or 3 weeks in the Alps and stuff. And so running, like track running, just always kind of got in the way of that. So I never really did a track season. Came back to school after the summer. I must have been around 14 maybe. And I just started training again. So I was like, oh, I don't really know what else to do on a Tuesday evening, to be honest. There was a guy I fancied, so I really wanted to impress him, which in turn made me really fit. So I got my first Scotland vest. And I think that was when I was like, oh, like, okay, it wasn't just in primary school that I was good at this. Like, I can still do this. This is fun. So I think that was probably the first time where I was like, wow. And it felt so special then. You like, this was still in the times when you got a letter through the post. Like it felt like going to Hogwarts, like they'd write a letter saying you'd been selected for Scotland. Now it comes in an email.
Yeah.
And it's still exciting, but there's nothing quite like opening that letter and it had the like Scottish Athletics logo on it and stuff. But yeah, and then I guess I just I was probably quite good for the north of Scotland, like throughout being a teenager, but yeah, I feel like I always had a sort of quite good cross country season and then not as good a track season because that kind of perception I had that summer was for fun never really went away. So, all through uni, I'd have these great cross country seasons where I'd maybe podium. I remember I think I was like second at under 20 cross country, national cross country champs. And I was like, oh, that's really good. And then I'm going to have this great track season. And then I sort of just didn't because I just wasn't that interested in it, turns out. Yeah, and then later, like it wasn't until my fourth year of uni that I think I got my first GB vest, and it was similar. It was always like whenever I've had a breakthrough, it's always been just when I'm thinking about maybe throwing the towel in, but I get drawn back in for whatever reason. And it was similar then. I'd been really injured in 2016, had shin splints and hadn't been very well, blah, blah, blah. And then I think I sort of was like, right, okay, I'm going to achieve this thing and I'm going to go for it. So and I remember when I started going to try and achieve my first GB vest, it felt like this like pie in the sky, really unrealistic aim. And the closer it got to the competition, the closer I was like, oh, do you know, I actually could do this. And I suppose, yeah, I had a couple of good years after that, then more illness, and same with the marathon, I feel like I wouldn't say I've had like a star-studded time in sport at all. It's definitely been peaks and troughs and periods of quite a reasonable amount of success and then kind of going back to normal, if you like. So yeah, I don't know. That's, I suppose, a rough summation of my time in sport.
Yep, it is. You kind of missed out some key highlights, which I would certainly have mentioned. Not to mention what you just did in London. I mean, I know it's just very insignificant, but
No, not at all.
but for those that are listening, you just did something pretty special at London, didn't you?
Yeah, so I won the British Champs at London Marathon, and yeah, so first Brit, and I ran 2:29 for the marathon. So that was really good. It was sort of, yeah, debut of dreams. Couldn't ask for more. Well, you can always ask for more, but yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, you absolutely smashed it, as we say up here. Something you've touched on quite a few things there. One of the things I picked up on when I first obviously came across you and your profile and what you were doing and stuff was that thing about injury, and and obviously I've later read more about when you've had periods of maybe not being your best in health wise. So what's that like for you, Mhairi? Those periods, because there'll be a lot of people will be listening now. They'll be going through similar things. What's that been like in terms of when you have had periods when you just can't catch a break, the body's not with you, it's not, you know, you're not aligned, your mind and body. And what's that been like for you, and how have you got yourself through those times?
I mean, it's really hard. Like, there's not really like two ways about it. I guess for the past 5 years, I've like had chronic chest infections and been really, really, really ill. I've definitely had periods during that time where I have managed to string some training together and have a good performance, but my time in sport has been massively interrupted by that. Yeah, I guess from 2017 to 2019, I kind of had consistently good performances, and I've sort of thought that was like the beginning of my running career, if you like. You know, I've always run, but it's felt like, oh, I'm having a breakthrough. Like maybe I could do this on a more full-time basis. It was quite exciting. You know, I signed with a management agency. I was like, brands were talking to me. It was really exciting. And I had like 3 GB vests in a row, won Scottish national championships for cross country, was running PBs on the track. I'd changed coach, so I was training with a coach who like had been an Olympian. I just felt like, oh, I'm making it. And then I broke up with a long-term relationship, and I think my world kind of turned upside down a wee bit. And I felt less focused on running. I think for me, from 2017 to 2019, although I was performing really well and it was exciting, and I probably had quite an unhealthy relationship with sport, it definitely was, it was just quite intense. I definitely I'd had struggles with eating in my early 20s, and I feel like although I was fueling, I don't know how healthy I was with food. I think I was still quite controlled and quite stringent, and definitely had some interesting like controlling behaviors that I was demonstrating about myself, just like weird shit like labeling everything in the flat, like the milk was labeled, like just in case I didn't know what it was, you know. And I guess those behaviors were coming to the fore because I felt out of control in other ways. And I suppose over the summer of 2019, I was still performing reasonably okay in running. And then I sort of started like branching out and exploring other bits of life. So, you know, like going out with my friends more maybe, and like felt like I was on a bit of a path to self-discovery, and running was at odds with that because it is so controlled. And I think I was trying to reject that a bit. And that summer 2019 ended with me getting my first in a long series of chest infections. It turns out it coincided with me moving into a flat that had really bad black mold, but I didn't know that at the time. I thought that that was just my body breaking down after years of kind of not having the healthiest relationship with food and exercise, perhaps. And yeah, I just sort of didn't really recover from that chest infection for like a really long time, and I just kept getting new ones. I started going to the doctor to get antibiotics. They would clear them up, and then I would just get another chest infection. And this went on for a really long time. So from August 2019 all the way until the pandemic started, I had probably like 9 chest infections. So it was basically one a month. When the pandemic started, the doctors finally started listening to me. So I was working in a university at the time, and they were like, oh, you're just getting ill because you're working with students and they're always ill. And I was a bit like, sure, but all my colleagues are fine. So that doesn't make any sense. When the pandemic started, I got a chest infection when we were in lockdown, so I wasn't around anybody. And I think that was the first time that the doctor thought, okay, there's maybe something more going on. Let's delve deeper. And at this point, like I was just quite frustrated because I felt like, okay, maybe I wasn't wanting to focus on running, but now I can't. Like even if I wanted to, I'm just ill all the time. So I felt like maybe the pandemic offered me an opportunity to like slow down my life and really focus on like how I could get better and rebalance stuff, be a bit less manic. You know, I'd kind of been super controlled and stripped back my life of all the joy. 2019 summer filled it with joy and also trying to balance with running. And then I needed to kind of recalibrate, and it was a bit of an opportunity to kind of find that focus. I started getting tests in hospital. Everything came up as I'm fine. I had chest x-rays, I had blood tests until the cows came home. Everything suggested that I was a healthy person. I had tests, pretty extensive tests to figure out if I had asthma. they said that I had probable exercise-induced asthma, but it just didn't feel like I was like, well, maybe, you know, my mum's got eczema, my brother's got asthma. It's a possibility, but I don't wheeze. The only suggestion that this would be a probable diagnosis is that I get chest infections. It's the only symptom I have of asthma. So yeah, I guess from that point, you know, I tried to pick up running again over 2020. But I still like wasn't really focused. I felt like I kind of needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my life outside of running as well. You know, I felt like I'd put my life on hold for quite a long time. But yeah, I suppose in summary, to not drag on, but those 5 years was a lot of like figuring out what I wanted out of life, what place sport had in my life, and why I was doing it, if I was still going to do it. And I feel like it's taken a long time, but I've gotten there. And in that process, found out that, yeah, the flat that I had been in for 2 years and then the subsequent flat that I was in for the next 3 years both had really, really bad mold problems. And now that we've moved into this new flat, which we moved in January, I've been completely like healthy. I've been around people that have had a cold and I've not picked it up. Whereas previously, if someone coughed, I had a chest infection. But yeah, there's been a lot of tears. It was really difficult. And I think it was like just at odds of my perception of myself. You know, I was basically like this sickly person who was just never healthy. And I didn't see myself as that. I saw myself as like quite a strong, healthy person. But my reality was not that. And so, yeah, that was definitely hard. I was like, you know, I'm a person that's full of energy. I've got loads of potential. I can do stuff. Like, but yeah, my body was telling me, no, you can't go to bed.
So you've got all this period of your physical health is sort of in a bit of a battle with you, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of what you want and what you're experiencing, but also something that I guess, you know, obviously as I've sort of learned about your sort of trials and tribulations, there was some um suggestion about the things that you had been through in your life, you know, the things that you ended up speaking out about, um, and how that possibly had a coalition between your physical health and, you know, and what was going on. And before I get you to give me your insight into that, it was something that I actually, when I was out a run some months ago, was actually going up Conic Hill at the time. And I was listening to a podcast by Joe Dispenza, and he talks about if your thoughts can make you, um, he believes that your thoughts can make you sick, right?
Mm.
So if you have constant feelings of, you know, things that haven't went well, bad things have happened, never going to catch a break, then they can manifest themselves and they can show up in a physical way through your body. And he talks about, well, if your thoughts can make you sick, then therefore your thoughts can also make you better. The reason I'm throwing that out there, and apologies for kind of going all over the place with that, is I wonder what your thoughts are now, having reflected on how your physical health was back then when you were carrying a lot of stuff around that you hadn't yet spoken out about,
Mhm.
to once you did speak out, once you did take ownership of that, have you noticed a correlation between how your physical health and overall mindset improved?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't an overnight improvement, to be
No,
honest.
no.
So I guess, yeah, I feel like I've beaten around the bush. Basically, through my whole time at university from 2013 to 20 God, what's that? 2019, I was with a coach who has been banned for life for sexual abuse. And I was one of the first complainants, along with two other athletes. So I guess during that period at university, like I'm not going to say it was all bad, because it wasn't. You know, I definitely had some good times at university and I definitely had good performances. But yeah, it was all sort of tainted in a way, and I knew that I had to speak up, but it just took me such a long time to get to a place where I could. And I think particularly the latter period where some of the abuse intensified, I was definitely just putting a lid on everything and kind of ignoring it. And I knew I'd have to deal with it at some point, but I just didn't want to, because I was running well and I didn't want to interrupt my career, which is so often, now that I work in that space and understand better what happened to me and patterns of behavior, that's so often why it takes people, particularly athletes, time to speak up, because they are worried about their sporting career and the disruption it might cause. And I guess, that's obviously why I was not, had a really unhealthy relationship with athletics and with food and, other things. Like I was probably not a very good friend. I wasn't very good at having fun. My mum describes it as like, it just felt like the joy had been sucked out of me, and she felt like she didn't recognize me anymore as a person. And so in the summer of 2019, I think it was maybe 2019 or 2020, I actually can't remember, the dates definitely blur. I spoke out, well, I reported what had happened to me, along with, and the other two athletes also reported what happened to them at the time. And during the period of that investigation, I definitely felt liberated, like to an extent, that something was happening. And then when the case concluded, and there was a bit of a process. Initially, it was a 3-year ban, and then there was an appeals process, then a panel hearing, disciplinary process where I was cross-examined, and that was all awful. But yeah, there's definitely an element of it being liberating. You've had this thing like bubbling up underneath you for me it was 6 years, that you then finally release. But obviously, with anything, it's almost like all the poison came out, and it took a while for the dust to settle. And I think that's what the last kind of 4 or 5 years has been for me, is like working through a lot of that with, I had a lot of like psychotherapy work that I did with a kind of trauma specialist, and then I continue to have mental health support actually through Edinburgh University, and she's somebody I worked with previously as well, like just for sports stuff. So yeah, I definitely feel like much stronger now, and I think having gone through that, I'm just really protective of the relationship I've managed to build with sport, and also like of the balance I've managed to achieve in my life. So whenever I feel like I'm becoming a bit too intense about running, which is really easy, it's really easy to do because of the behaviors that are like rewarded and lauded, I suppose, within like elite sport. If you make sacrifices and you cut out social occasions and you have a really strict diet, that's what people expect of you. So if I ever feel like I'm saying no to a social occasion because of a training session, less so for a race, like I understand that for races, I can't go on a night out the night before, but if I ever feel like I'm, saying no to a friend's barbecue because I've got a long run the next day, I definitely have to like, check in and make sure that I don't fall back into old habits because they were established for such a long time.
That just sort of breach right into a whole new topic there in terms of that whole discipline part, which we absolutely need to go to. So you've spoke out, which I can't even explain to you how much I admire you for that courage. Having spent an earlier part of my younger life working with young people, and many of those young people never find the courage to speak out in that way. I tip my hat. So you start to get yourself back on track physically. You spiritually, you're starting to unburden some of that baggage, but obviously that doesn't completely go away. It's not like that's the end of the matter. Um, and then you start to sort of get yourself back on track in terms of who you are as a woman, try to navigate, yeah. You start to sort of work out a bit more about who your identity is moving forward.
Yeah, I think it was my identity was so like closely like intertwined with me as an athlete.
Yeah.
So I had to really detangle that and figure out who I was beneath all of it. And that was quite hard because, people would introduce me, and I actually really hate it now when people introduce me as like, oh yeah, this is Mhairi, she's a runner. It's like, yeah, sometimes, like for an hour a day, I'm a runner. And then I do loads of other things and I'm loads of other things. So I think that yeah, it's definitely, do you know what? Like it's a really hard process. It's a really difficult process. And I've definitely but like also it's really fun, like figuring out who you are, and like in hindsight, it's fun. When it's done, you're like, oh cool, that was good. That was
Yeah.
good fun.
It's never fun when you've got to do the work, is it? But once the
Oh,
work's
it's hard.
done, yeah, it's like, I guess, a cool analogy would be you blitz that London Marathon finish line and people just go, well, I mean, that's Mhairi, the HOKA athlete. I mean, of
Mhm.
course she's going to do that. They don't see, well, I mean, you could probably tell us what that prep for to put that performance in, what that prep actually is. People, and they're like, yeah, but that's, I mean, of course, and it's like it almost diminishes the shit that you've got to go through and do to get that result.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like not everybody has to go through all that shit to get that result. I think like I had a lot of work to do before I was ever going to be ready to get on the start line of a marathon. I know I've always known I wanted to do one, but I've never felt ready before. And to be honest, even when like I had my last, like the last seriously intense period of illness that I had was from September to basically, yeah, mid-November. So, when I started that marathon build, I was starting from zero because I'd been absolutely like bedbound to the point where like pootling on my bike from point to point to watch my partner in a 10K in Edinburgh floored me for the next day. Like the next day I'd spend a whole day in bed. So we were starting from a place where like my immune system didn't exist. Um so yeah, I mean I think like that marathon build, probably more than any marathon build I'll ever do, hopefully, was such a like journey of like me getting to a place where I was physically and mentally strong enough to take that on. Because yeah, I had a lot of like through a lot of the marathon build, I was like, yeah, it was just get through the training, but like obviously, like probably not going to make it to the start line. I just assumed I wouldn't, because it took me like 8 goes to get to a half marathon start line. So I kept getting ill or injured. So I just assumed like I won't be able to do this first time round. Like I'll have to do a couple of marathon builds before I get to go to one. So I sort of freaked out 2 weeks to go. I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to run this thing. So yeah, I booked an emergency appointment with my psychologist to be like, what's going on? But yeah, it was a bit of a journey. But like I said, it's not like that for everyone.
So did you go into, just because we were talking about that a minute ago, did you go into, I'm going to use this expression without, did you go into monk mode for this? Did you properly
Nah.
walk? No, you didn't.
No, I specifically didn't because I just didn't want to change my life. Like I think I made an agreement and a pact with myself that like I think, so I've been working with my current coach for like 2.5 years now. When I started being coached by him, I made a pact with myself that I was never gonna like make sacrifices in the way I used to ever again. So, like the Saturday before the race, we went out for dinner with friends to their house. It was like a low key event, but like I had couple of glasses of wine and it was nice. And I got up the next morning, did my run, and like in the week leading up to the marathon on the Wednesday, I was like, okay, the Wednesdays far enough out from the race that like I didn't have a drink or anything, but or maybe I did. I actually don't remember. Don't think I did. But like we were at a pub for dinner and like it was nice. I had a burger and chips, like, you know, watched the football. I mean my partner watched the football. I was there for the food. But tried to keep it as normal as possible. And even on the Friday before the race, we went and had dinner with friends. I just wanted to keep some normality. Like I worked that full week before the marathon. Like I don't want to, as much as is possible, and it's obviously not totally possible, I want running to complement my life rather than like be my life. And that's a really specific choice for me. It doesn't work for everyone. And I totally get that some people really want to be a full-time athlete and that that's the dream for them. But that is like a nightmare for me because I think that, yeah, I just don't think I'm the kind of person that that's going to work for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I mean, I am conscious even of the sacrifice it takes for me to compete in the way that I compete, which is like the old man's club competing, like, but it, it it's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of, you know, like you say, I mean, we've just come through probably what feels like the worst winter of all time. It felt like it was never going to end, you know, and you're out. For me to balance training with work, family, and any other thing that you don't want to give up because it's important to you, and you may be catching up with someone or studying something, to train in a way that you can actually show up in a race and do okay, it takes a lot. Even like you say, like I probably tried to be like you, not lose my character and who I am, um, to be still present if my partner wants to have a conversation with me rather than going, what was my times and did I
Yeah.
do those split, all that crazy stuff. But at the same time, it takes a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been that person that can only talk about your splits. And you know, I think a lot of people that I went to uni with would like attest to that I was a boring arsehole and like, you know, I would not go to social events, I'd cancel last minute. I like was obsessed with running and like what a boring thing to be obsessed with. Honestly, like, you know, it's not like there's a limit to how much you can talk about it, but I'm probably going to really piss people off by saying that. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I also train really hard and I don't miss a day of training. And when I say I'm flexible with training, it means I rejig it. So like, you know, this weekend, for example, I went and like climbed some Munros with my family. That wasn't on my training plan. So, you know, I spoke with my coach and I said, do you mind if I switch my long run to Saturday and instead of a long run, do 3 Munros? And then I'll do my session on Sunday. And he's like, not all coaches would be okay with that. And those coaches aren't for me because I have to be able to do that. And you know, it's not like climbing 3 Munros is still work. Like, you know, I look at the training load on my watch and it's equivalent to the run that I had planned. So it's not like I'm not training, but it's having that flexibility to be able to do the other things that I really love if I can. And you know, it's far enough out from a race, so it makes sense. Like I'm not stupid. I wouldn't do that the day before a race or even the week of. Or like a target race, you know, like obviously you've got to still train and do the things you need to do to get to that start line in the best shape possible. But if I can flex and play with those boundaries, I will.
I think there's a really good message in that, what you just said there about, you know, for the everyday man or woman who's listening to this, for them to hear you talking about don't beat yourself up over that missed session because you've decided to swap it out for going up and having a really cool day, walking up a mountain with people that you care about and care about you, laughing lots. It's still the value in that is incredible. Not just yeah, physically it might not feel at the time like it's ticking this massive box, but it is ticking a box physically, like you've just described. The load in it was still relative, but mentally the box that it ticks.
And I think that's it. Do you know, like I feel like when I was maybe younger, I mean, also that's just being younger, isn't it? But like when I was younger, I would not drink for the whole season, and then I'd go and get smashed on off season and go on nights out and then feel absolutely dreadful.
Yeah.
I don't really do that anymore. Like I don't enjoy the feeling of being absolutely smashed, but I do have a glass of wine at least once a week. You know, and I'm not like that's fine. It's not going to do anything to you. It's
Yeah.
not going to kill you. It's not poison. And so I'm happy to do that. And as long as you're like hydrating around it, and I still get my 8 hours sleep. So like, you know, if there's a night where my partner's not a runner, so you've got to, everything's got to be a compromise. You can't just be like, oh, well, I'm the athlete, so your whole life has to change for mine. So, you know, if he wants to go to the cinema until 11 o'clock, fine. But that means that I'm maybe gonna have to change my gym session to another day, or I might have to like do it in the afternoon because I'm still gonna get my 8, 9 hours sleep. But you know, I'm not going to get up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym unless I'm getting to bed at the right time. And if getting to the bed at the right time means sacrificing quality time with my partner, then I'm not going to do it. Do you know? And it's
Yeah.
just okay, you can't do that every week or you can't do it every day, but you can make it's just having that flexibility and not being like I think some people get into the mindset that like they have to do things exactly to the letter or they won't succeed. But actually, if you are constantly saying no to things and constantly sacrificing to the point where it actually feels like you are sacrificing, then you're not going to be as happy. You're not going to be as positive a frame of mind as you would be if you allowed yourself to do some of those things. And so ultimately, it's more detrimental to like strip back your life of all the things you like outside of the thing you want to achieve. So yeah, I try to do that. It isn't easy though, and it is like it's a constant. You've got to be constantly aware of it. Sometimes you can slip in and you're like, oh shit, I haven't seen friends for a week. Like, need to go and see my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Well, last guest, Jack, talked about what running has given him or what it gives him in his life. I'm curious, what has running gave you, or what does running give you?
That's a good question. I think I mean, it gives me loads of stuff. You know, it gives you a release. So like today, I have a really long day of work. And at the end of the day, I've got a run to do. It's on my plan, but I also get to do it today because today it's just an easy run and there doesn't require any like, you know, mental strength or whatever to get through an easy run. So it's like for me, that's a release, that's a relax. I'm going with my friend, we'll get to chat. Like that's nice. So, you know, it provides you with community and it also provides you with a mental release. Depending on it solely for your like mental health purposes, not good. Because if you're injured and then you have nothing else that you do in your life to make you feel good, then you're going to feel really shit if you're injured.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it provides that to an extent. You know, also provides structure, like, and I quite like that. I work well with structure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably a more minor thing, but it is nice knowing what you have to do each day and like it helps you like divide up the year and like have goals. I really like working towards a goal. I'm a very goal orientated person. I mean, I think human beings are in general, so that's always good. You don't always achieve the goal, but again, being flexible with your goals helps you always achieve one of them. Yeah, I think, you know, there's loads of transferable skills as well. There's like, you know, you learn how to lose, you learn how to suffer, you learn how to fail, you learn how to problem solve, you learn resilience. And like it is just also good for you. Like the endorphins that are released in your body from exercising every day means that you might be in, you know, you're benefiting from those endorphins every day. That's great. There's loads of stuff that like it can be bad for as well, but there are loads of positives.
Mm-hmm. And also the the person that comes into contact with you after the run is they're blessed with that, because you, as you say, you're enjoying the endorphins, but they get to enjoy the endorphins too. My partner also doesn't run, but she certainly gets to enjoy the best version of me post run,
Yeah.
as opposed to maybe pre-run when I'm sort of still carrying a day of work or other people's sort of business on, and you're looking to put that to the bed. You get out a run, you just ditch all that, you process things a little bit different, the right chemicals are cooking, and then your family get the best version of you, which is nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, it doesn't have to be running that gives you that. It can be whatever your like release is, whether that's like rock climbing or swimming or canoeing or baking or painting. It's important to have that thing in your week or your day, if you can manage it as often as that, that means that you're bringing your best self to the people that you care about.
Something I was thinking about, so you're a HOKA athlete, yeah?
Yeah.
I love HOKA. So we can talk about a brand that you are a HOKA athlete and I bloody love HOKA, so we'll talk about that. I'm curious, has that brought any added pressure if you think about it? Like, because as human beings, we live inside our heads a lot, and I was thinking about you in terms of it's easy for some people that maybe, no, that's also an assumption. I'm making a statement there that, say someone without the sponsorship or the brand maybe behind them. I'm curious as to how that expectation and pressure is without, as opposed to now that you have it. Because there's obviously benefits there, but I'm just curious about the other side of that.
Yeah, I mean, people hate talking about this side because the people that don't have a sponsor or don't have a brand always want the brand. And I remember before I had a sponsor, everybody was like, oh, it's not all that, like ads, added pressure, blah, blah, blah. And I was a bit like, yeah, it was so easy for you to say because you're on the other side. But it is true, unfortunately. And I know for me, so I've been with HOKA now for 3 years. And that first year, I wasn't running particularly well. And I actually felt pretty guilty, actually, that I had a sponsor and other people didn't. I think the weekend or like the Friday that I was sent the contract, I was racing on the Saturday, and for whatever reason, as if I was the judge of this, I was like, I'm not going to sign the contract until after the race because they might not want me after the race if I don't do well.
Yeah.
And I did shit. I had a panic attack in the race because I was still going through like all the stuff with my the coach I had at university, and I didn't have a good race. And so I didn't sign the contract for ages. And the guy contacted me. He was like, Mhairi, like, when are you sending me the signed contract? And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just figured that you wouldn't want to sign me anymore because I had a shit race. And he was like, you're insane. Just sign the bloody thing and send it to me. So, it definitely adds pressure. And I think you want to perform because you've been given this opportunity. So you want to make the most of it. It definitely adds an element of it becoming your job. I mean, not fully because, not everybody's earning money, but even if you're just being given kit. So the first year I was with them, I was just on kit. So they gave me shoes and clothes. Yeah, it's almost like, okay, this is not just my hobby now. It just changes the dynamic a little bit. So if you are having a bad time, it's almost like, okay, it just adds another person or another stakeholder, I guess, in your performance. And so it feels like, oh, I have to get back or I have to do well because I have to do well for the brand. So yeah, there's absolutely loads of positives, but definitely that was definitely something I struggled with probably for a bit. And then now, not that I'm over it, but I care less, which is probably not what they want to hear, but I just I don't let it mess with my head as much. Like, I'll do the best I can because I really want to. And if I have a sponsor, great, that's amazing. And if I, for some reason, don't, then that's also okay. I'm not less than if I don't have a sponsor.
So you've learned to master the controllable and ditch the uncontrollables.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not that easy, but it's so easy to say just control the controllables, and it's so much harder to actually just
Yeah.
control the controllables. But yeah, I feel like I'm getting there, like pre-London Marathon, so many people were like, have you checked the weather? Have you checked the weather? Have you checked the weather? I'm like, no, I don't want to, because it has been such shit weather for 3 months. It's been bad every day. And if I had checked the weather every day, I'd have been panicking about how bad my session was going to go because the weather was so bad. There are so many things that you have to control in a marathon. I can't control the weather, so I'm just not going to stress about it. Like, I'm already stressed.
And do you know the funny thing about that statement is every single person that's asking you, have you checked the weather? Have you checked the weather? They've already checked it. So why are they even asking you? They
Yeah,
already know. Just say, you've checked it for me. I don't need to know.
yeah, yeah. Which is what I said, to be fair. It is funny that, yeah, people are like, have you looked at it? Have you looked at it? And you're like, nah, no, I'm not
Nah,
gonna. I
nah.
can't change it. I'm not God. I can't change the weather.
Um, I've just looked at a couple of questions that I'd had down here. So we've covered actually quite a bit of this, but how aware of you, how aware are you now of your mental health and how you can raise it or what might lower it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably pretty aware. Of, yeah, just like I'm just a bit more attuned to like what I need to do to make sure that I feel good. Like, you can probably see the bed's not made. That's stressing me out. So I know I need to make the
Well,
bed.
the good thing is that's also everyone's going to see that you've not made the bed now.
I know, so good. I'm really happy about that. That's making me feel really good. Um, and like stupid things, there's just little things I know. And then, you know, prior to the marathon, I noticed I was feeling really stressed. Um, because yeah, it was just really daunting. So yeah, I just booked in to go and see my like Matilda. I just went and I had a session with her, and she was like, "Oh, like, how are you feeling?" And I was like, "I feel so much better. I just needed to put all my stress on you, so I feel good now. Thank you. See ya." So yeah, I like definitely know more or less when and I'm less afraid of saying like, I feel crap today. I'm having a bad brain day,
Yeah.
or like, I'm stressed. Like, sorry, I'm probably going to be a bitch to you. And my partner's pretty good at going, that's okay. Like, you're not, you're being fine. And it's almost like, because I'm aware of it, I'll maybe preempt it. And then actually by vocalizing it, you end up being okay in the end anyway.
So if I was to say, Mary, what would be your top three go-to items to fill your glass back up? What would you pick?
Um, like, just a quick tidy makes me feel good. Like, I feel like if my surroundings are a bit messy, which they are right now because we came back late last night from the Highlands, like, I know that that'll just make me feel a bit more like in control. Like, I've literally still got my cycling cleats underneath the desk from a last minute meeting that I had on Friday. So I know that like that'll make me feel a bit more in control and organized. Like, meeting up with friends, or like having yeah, just in connecting with the people that you care about. So whether that's like over a coffee or a cake, or like, saying to my partner, like, let's watch something together tonight. Um, and like food, good food, like spending some time cooking, like,
Mhm.
delving into that process of like actually making it a bit of an event. So like, having snacks whilst you cook, and like maybe a glass of wine and put some music on, and just like making it enjoyable. Like, I really get a lot of relaxation from that.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think just like slowing life down a bit.
Mhm. I like that. I like what you're describing there is what a lot of your points there is all about your environment. Your environment clearly needs to be. I spend a lot of time talking to people and one-to-ones around the two things that's really going to change your state is events or your environment. So if those are the two things that can change them negatively, then naturally those are the two things that can change them positively. So your environment being the people you spend your time with, the places you spend your time, or what you consume. And you sort of, it sounds like your sort of things that's going to lift you up is around that whole environment piece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking about is what comes next. Because when we talk about, again, I thought a lot about this when you crossed the finish line at London, strangely enough, because I knew we were potentially going to be chatting. And I was like, well, where does she go from here? What comes? So, again, I was talking about this in the last podcast about I had a really powerful conversation with someone who's done unbelievable things out and, has ended up on TV and all this kind of stuff. And he talks about this thing called the adventurer's itch. So when you go from a real high and then you go, shit, and you go, right, okay. And you've got to really, like you said, you've got to find what's the next goals, what am I going to do, all that good stuff. I'm curious, what did you feel that little after London? Because they say most people get it. And did you have that moment of going, well, what the hell what am I doing next? Where am I going?
Yeah, I mean, I did, and I kind of knew it was going to happen, so I just let it happen. Like, after a marathon, obviously you need to recover, so it like takes some time. So, I had that full week off after the marathon, and I'd like made some plans with friends and like, went for a sea dip, like, yeah, organized stuff that like I might not otherwise be able to do. Although I have to say, initially, first couple of days, I couldn't do anything anyway because I was so exhausted and sore, like couldn't really walk properly. You're like, oh, I'm going to do all these things. Oh, wait, no, I'm actually just going to stay in bed. So yeah, definitely took some time. And then I guess I'm still slowly figuring out what's next. I've got plans, but I'm just not like getting too invested in them because I don't have like the energy or capacity to like really, really care about these next goals yet. I just think that that takes time. So I've got a couple of races lined up, but they're not like really important races. I know I'm fit just now and I like racing, so I'll just go and do them for fun, type 2 fun, obviously.
Type two.
Um, and then, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like I am excited about the next marathon. Like, I'm definitely obviously, I want to do another one and I want to do one in different conditions. So like I'd like to run one with more people around me to see what kind of a difference that makes and see if I can run my own race a bit more. And yeah, obviously like the first marathon build, there was just so much unknown, and I feel like we've learned quite a lot from that. So putting that learning into place will be exciting. But I'm actually getting married first, so that's probably what's next on the list.
Yeah, that sounds like the first significant goal that you've got.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm curious, from what you're saying, does that feel like we're going to see you staying in the marathon game, maybe going after another major or something?
So I think we've kind of penciled in Seville as the next one. Heard good things. Valencia's too soon.
Okay.
And to be honest, I don't really want to wait a full year. Like I sort of like it. I am itching a little bit to like
Yeah,
try.
yeah.
I couldn't do it right now, but yeah, so just feels like a good one to try, and it seems that people run reasonably fast there. So yeah, I think I've been waiting probably my whole career, if you can call it that, my whole time in sport to do a marathon. So yeah, I'm definitely not going to stop after one. Yeah, there's loads of other life things to consider, like I want to have kids at some point, and it's just like, when does that make sense? And um, is it that you put your life on hold, or like that side of life on hold for major competitions, or do you try and do both? Or what I've still figured stuff to figure out in that capacity. So
And I'm curious, just from a personal interest, will we see Mhairi from the Highlands eventually delving into the mountain stuff? Do you think? Will we ever see her? No, she's shaking her head straight away.
Oh, and people ask me this all the time, because I did obviously, like, I grew up like doing Monroe's every single weekend, so it feels, and like I love cross country, so it feels like, oh, natural fit, like obviously she'll do that. Yeah, absolutely not. For me, like the hills are, I think running is really intense and I love it, but it is intense. It's quite an aggressive way of exercising. And I don't know, for me, there's something really like peaceful and calming about the hills. Like I do
Yeah,
not want to ruin that by running up them and being in loads of pain and panting and huffing up them. I think I could do it where, like, the hills we were doing on Saturday, there were bits where I was like, oh, this is a bit boring, this is a bit of a drag, I could run this bit. You might do that, but that's really just because it's a more efficient way of getting the day done. But I wouldn't ever want to run up them, and I definitely wouldn't want to race them.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a meditative experience for me, like doing any like Monroe's or hill
yeah,
climbing. Um, yeah, like to
yeah.
take in the scenery slowly rather than try and race.
Don't lose the therapeutic element.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Couple of things was in my mind this morning. So I'll do them in the right order. Um, if you could go back and give a little bit of wisdom or advice to the younger Mhairi,
Mhm.
what do you think you would give her?
Oh God, I don't really know where I'd start, to be honest. I'm gonna just say chill out. Like, stop taking yourself so seriously. Like, I think I was so bent on, like, I made it almost my trademark. Like, I don't care what people think about me. Like, maybe you should care a bit more. Like, just you are not that big a deal. And I don't even know that I thought that was a big deal. I think I just thought I'm going to live my life in this really specific, rigid, controlled way because this is what I have to do. Like, I think I would just say, like, tone it down, dial it back, chill out, not be less, but just like spread yourself out a bit more, like do more things. There's more to life. Life's really interesting, it's expansive, it's rich, and you are intensely sampling from one very small pool. Like spread it out a bit. Um, yeah. But I probably would have bit my own head off and said, get lost. You know nothing. I'm gonna do what I want. Because I'm pretty sure my mum tried to say those things to me a million times, and I was just like, oh my God, you know nothing, you don't understand running. So I'm not sure. I'm not very good at taking advice, if I'm honest. So I don't think I'd listen to my own advice.
No, but it's a good insight into what if you had the opportunity to just to give yourself one little lesson. I think that's a good lesson to give.
Yeah. I think just like less eggs all in one basket approach to life.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. That's good. Um, what about, and again, I think I asked this one to almost all of my guests because the power that you hold in a conversation. Um, so if someone's listening to this just now, could be a guy, could be a female, uh, and they're struggling, maybe not as how they want to be right now, things going on in their life, struggles, suffering. What's the best advice you would give them if you could generalize that in some shape or form?
That's really hard because I think when things are hard,
Mhm.
it feels like nothing anybody says is that helpful because it just feels like you can't apply it to your own life because your situation is so specific to you, even if it is actually more universal than you think. But like the main thing is it's not going to be like that forever. Like it is temporary. Life is full of ups and downs constantly. There's ups and downs within the downs, and there's ups and downs within the ups. So like ride it and try and find the tiny joys, the little sparks of joy in every day, because it's never so bad that there's nothing good. Like you can get a chocolate bar any day, and that will change your day even a little bit. Do you know, like and sometimes it feels like it's just so heavy and it's so hard. But, listen to the song that you like, or like just take it really slowly, take it bit by bit, really like don't lift the pressure off of yourself to move through that pain really quickly and to get over it and to jump back up. And I don't even feel like saying that time is a healer or like it takes time is helpful, because we know that. And so it just means that we're trying to like think about, okay, well, when is the time that I'm going to feel fine? Like, when does that time run out? What am I waiting for? Like, how long do I have to wait? I think it's about lifting expectations off of yourself, to move through it quickly. And like, let yourself feel it. Like my mum said, I remember one point, she was like, it comes in waves. And those waves are really intense, but it does come in waves. Like it's not bad all the time. So feel the wave, like actually feel it, because if you don't allow yourself to like feel that grief or that sadness or that pain, you're going to feel it later in really complicated ways. So, yeah, it's a bit of, like not this kind of like abstract advice. And really not.
No, I really like it, Mhairi. It's thought provoking. I spent time with someone just in the last couple of weeks, and they've got a tremendous worry in their head at the moment. And they says, but you don't understand how much that this is playing in my mind. This is really worrying me. And I asked them something that I think all of us could do with remembering sometimes. I says, what was the thing that you worried, 3 times ago, like your third last worry? And they looked at me with this, what? I went, well, what was your third last worry? Because that would have been, I guess, significant. And as they racked their brain and racked their brain, they says, I don't remember. And what I was trying to explain to them was, well, at that moment, that thing would have seemed the biggest thing going on in the world at the moment, in their life at that moment. But it's now so long departed, it doesn't actually matter. And this thing that you're worrying about right now, as the saying goes, this too shall pass. And this will drift into the memory bank of all the other things that we worry about. And we worry about a lot. This
Yeah.
is human beings. We worry about so many things, like you touched on earlier, about that's actually out with our control. Worrying about what people think about us. Wow, how much time do we lose with that shit? When what they think about us has actually got nothing to do with us. It never has done. And I think worry is something that, from speaking to people, I hear it, I hear why you're worrying, but this will soon not be a thing. So also let that be, let that pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's transient, isn't it? Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't last long, but I think it's also natural to worry.
Yeah, yep, yep, yep. Allow it, process it, learn from it, grow. Um, Last couple of questions for me. Who's your hero and why?
I don't really have heroes. I don't believe in putting people on pedestals because we're all flawed.
So
Um,
let me reframe. Who is a role model and why?
Same answer. I honestly don't. I think like there's inspiring bits in everybody. So my dad's always said like take the good from people and leave the rest, and I kind of use that.
That is modeling. That is.
Yeah, but so there's no one person, because no one person is enough to like it, no one person is so amazing that I would want to emulate them or like look up to them excessively, because I think you need to recognize that everybody we're all just like boring humans. Like, yeah, we've all done inspirational stuff in different measure, and like you can admire that one thing that that person has done, but like, you know, I guess idolizing people or even like positioning them as a role model in your life, I think is a dangerous path to start following down. And I've literally just never understood it. So I don't really have one. I think like I have a friend who is a full-time nurse and saves people's lives by night and runs by day. I think that's really impressive. Um, yeah, I think it's finding the exceptional in the ordinary is more impressive. There's no specific person.
I think you just, in a roundabout, long route way, managed to answer the question without even meaning to, which I think is pretty naturally impressive because it was unintentional. I think what you've just described in your friend is exactly what role modeling is. It's not to put people on pedestals. It's to look as we grow through life. The reason I'm going to length to explain this is because I want people to understand what modeling. If you ever listen to Tony Robbins, modeling is actually one of the most important things of growth that you can embrace. It's not comparison. It's not putting people on pedestals because people aren't actually even aware that you're doing it. You're modeling on people looking to see the attributes and skills and inspirational characteristics that people have in their own unique way, and thinking to yourself, how does that show up in me? How do I want these types of things? How do I present? How do I serve? Because you'll be unaware that people right now will be modeling on you. And that'll be quite, because you're so humble, that'll be kind of quite, well, what, why, but people, young women, even guys, looking and going, wow, I look at, I'm modeling there on Mhairi. I see courage, I see conviction, I see, and so on and so on and so on. So I'm passionately about modeling in the healthy, non-toxic way
I
of,
just don't think we're very good at it.
no, Mhairi, I
Mm.
agree. I
So
agree
I
with
think,
that.
yeah, I don't think there's very many people that probably do it very well, and I
No,
think
yeah,
I think that's why I stay away from it. And people have said, oh, like you're such a role model,
yeah,
etc., etc. And I find it quite uncomfortable
yeah,
because, um, like obviously it's lovely. I like that somehow whatever I'm doing is a force for good or
yeah.
positivity in people's lives. That's obviously lovely, but um, I just think as a as a race, we need to be careful about
Yeah.
how we idolize people and um yeah, perhaps lean towards obsession sometimes, and it's almost like we belittle ourselves in that process so often.
Yeah, it's probably yeah, I've only become aware of that explanation I gave. I've only become aware of that in the last 3 years. Before that, I wouldn't have been able to. And yeah, if you said, so who's your role model? It would have been like, yeah, people that you've never met, these crazy fictional characters and all this kind of thing. But no, it's a good way of describing it. Some couple of little ones just to finish. So fun ones. Favorite pre-race meal?
I usually do like a pasta and pizza double if I can get my hands on it.
Oh yes, yes. That's what I
You're,
think.
yeah, if you're staying at a race hotel, it's sometimes harder. So like pre-London Marathon, I couldn't do that because there was no pizza. But so it was just double pasta. But yeah, like to sort of vary that. been doing that for a couple of years since my friend, well, probably 5 or 6 years since my friend and I were staying in a hotel in Brighton, and we ordered, I think, a pizza, and it just wasn't enough, so we got pasta, or vice versa. I can't remember, but yeah, pasta pizza double.
Yeah, big tick in the box for me. Like I love that. That is my go-to item, and I think it's actually it's living in my own head now because I had one good result the day after I did pizza pasta, and then now I've got to have it. I've got to have it, but it is a bonus that I absolutely love it. Favorite location to run?
God, probably. Probably the Great Glen Way near where my dad is.
Oh.
It's super nice, nice views, nice trail. I don't really like getting up to it because it's really, really steep. But once you're on it, it's super nice. And it's yeah, you can like look over Inverness. Really pretty.
That's one I've never been to, but I've heard about the race, and I've heard a lot of people sharing that it's a great spot.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah. Bucket list race.
Oh, I don't really have one. Bucket list race. I don't know, it would be cool to do the Boston Marathon at some point. Looks like a tough one. I think that'd be cool. I remember Des Linden winning it in 2018. That was just badass. That'd be cool. I probably wouldn't win it, but it'd be nice to do it.
Do they feel that these big ones, they just get stronger and I know that seems like such a silly little, of course they do, but like for me to understand this, so you've did London, which that's a biggie, but how does that where does the margin lie between the majors? Is it a huge margin or
I don't know. I'm new to this game. I'm a
yeah?
newbie. I have no idea.
I was curious as to how the London field, elite field, if you like, compares with the other ones.
I think it's probably, it just depends on the year. I really don't know.
Yeah, so it probably varies. Yeah. Um, the last one here I've got is favorite mid race. It says snack, but how do you feel?
I mean, so marathon's the only time I've ever taken fuel on in a
Mhm.
race. I did take a gel on in the Copenhagen half marathon, but yeah, so I take on gels.
Was that an interesting first time kind of concept of being disciplined, adding that into the things you had to think about?
Yeah,
Fuel,
yeah. I mean, that was
fuel.
obviously I'd never done that before, so that was a learning curve.
And did you feel like it was a positive experience, something that you kind of mastered okay? You feel
Yeah, I didn't have any
oh,
problems. I was really fortunate to have help from Precision Fuel and Hydration. So the sports scientists on their team helped me figure out what I should and shouldn't do. So yeah, I didn't have to do much thinking about it, to be honest.
and that's that. I suppose that's the you see lots and lots of people now in that as maybe just sort of starting out in that, and when they hit that wall, and you see people like
Yeah.
I think we saw it a couple of times on the cameras and stuff where people were clearly that I don't think they'd taken much on during it, and they looked in a pretty grim nick.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of various responses at the end of the marathon.
Mary, fantastic. We've managed to get through some deep topics and then covering what you like to eat before a race. We've managed to cover quite a bit. Um, I will be sharing, how you can follow Mary and the details of the post. I'll also be sharing about Mary's advocacy, project because I think there'll be people out there that that need to know about that as well, so that we can really really spread the word about the fantastic work that Mary and her friend are doing. I would just like to say thank you very much for coming on. I've really, really enjoyed speaking to you. I just love that. Yeah, you're just kind of trying to be you, trying to be you, your authentic self. The kind of honesty and in terms of your journey, how you're trying to keep it real, no put yourself under massive pressure. and that you're no there yet. You're not the finished article. You're still making mistakes, if you like, and still trying to work it all out. Which I think a lot of people listen to this and go, well, if she's still feeling that, then I'm actually okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So thanks very much, and thanks everyone for tuning in. As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, give it a share, let friends and family know, keep spreading the word, and we'll keep bringing on these guests for diverse conversations. So thanks again, Mhairi.
No problem at all.